one scenario where the product owner might leave. Thus, your product's direction does not get well defined. The question mark will come back on the faces, people will get disengaged, you would have a problem. Now, in a waterfallish kind of problem, you might have a longer cycle to do that. But in a where planning has been done, what you would do, you would have change control boards and stuff like that. In an agile thing, you're expected to deliver every 2 weeks. So if that is not being accepted in 2 weeks, the team would look for it every 2 weeks. Now, the scenarios where we dealt with this, with the question mark kind of problem, is that if the product owner is disengaged, obviously you'll have to speak to that management, make sure things are open. Sometimes you have to step in. If the Scrum team is not happy, sometimes they could not be happy with each other and they may not tell you, which is where you have that transparent process which could help you. If you have a scenario where the product is about to be disbanded, sometimes we as managers might know a little more through the product owner. You probably have to be more open about it. The fourth thing that you could potentially do is ask people to innovate. We have run things like hacks, innovation sprints and things like that, which have potentially removes the question mark on the face, where you would get better motivation. In an agile context, of course, you have to remember who creates the backlog. If you don't have a product owner, do you get another guy to be the product owner, or do you step in for some time? I don't know the right answer, but you would have to find, it's a matter of skills, I think. You would have to find what is the right thing, because you may have to step in. And if you go back to the original thing, intuition, influence, intervention, in some cases you might need to intervene in this scenario, step in and say, yes, this is what is going to happen, I'm going to show direction. Because the product owner is going, the process says he's the direction giver for the product, right? And your motivation is often dependent on what comes up. This is similar to the earlier one I was taking, which is the Linux and Windows example, which was the changing lanes part. Often when you change lanes in a car, you would do these certain steps. And since I used the example earlier, it's the Windows and the Linux problem. The skills were not compatible. The motivations were not compatible. There are even there's very interesting motivation. Sometimes you may not even think. One of the guys who said he wanted to work, did not want to work on Windows. I mean, it was the reverse. Later we went back to Windows actually. It was remarkable. Windows, Linux, and we said Windows is important again, and we did Linux and Windows. And by then, one of the guys who was in Linux said he would not want to work on Linux. You can say it's an operating system, it's programming, it's C++, go do it on both, it doesn't really matter. But he said he has a philosophical reason, and this is very interesting. He said, I believe in open source. I do not believe in coding in Windows. And sometimes as a manager, the Scrum Master might come and tell you he's not engaged, he's not doing things. How you probe into and potentially find what the reason is very, very interesting, that you could come across some unique cases of people who say that I don't believe in closed source.
And why do you say unique? In Yahoo there must be plenty of people like this.
That's what I'm saying. So you probably, I don't know the example, which is why I'm using
Windows is for secretaries and managers.
Sir?
Windows is for secretaries and managers, not for programmers.
Exactly. Unfortunately, the product we sold made many millions by installing itself on Windows. It was a security product. So yeah, so that's the other thing. So these are not exhaustive, of course. These are examples of things that you as managers can give value to your teams, and potentially this is where you could, these are decisions that you would need to make in an agile context. Some may be easier, some may be more difficult. But again, this is not an exhaustive list. I've noticed as a manager, these seem to help, even if you look across that. One is people own backlogs as a team function. While we talk of cross-functional teams, often there is this, we talk of QE and dev and all these other functions. The QE guy wants to take, like we heard an example where he said the QE guy is waiting for the code to come. But I would tell a QE guy why that person cannot potentially even take a small bug and fix it or something like that. And the dev guy is saying, I've done my dev, I'm going to sit back. I would tell the developer that why wouldn't you go ahead and do some testing? And I think, I don't know who, but somebody used an example where in 6 sprints you could potentially do all this stuff. It sounds idealistic, but it is possible if you influence that as a culture. Even a small thing, just this QE and dev thing, if you do it, you could potentially benefit. For example, functional tests do not always need to be written by Q. They could be written by developers. Unit tests do not always need to be written by developers. They could be written by Q. That's one thing. Our team pick their own task. As managers, we sometimes forget it. Someone asked a little earlier, somebody said they only send Scrum Masters to trainings and not managers. This is a fundamental thing that every manager who's like, I don't know, I've been in the industry for a reasonable number of years, who's faced the earlier problem is try not to assign as much as possible. Even if you want to really badly, you know the person is leaving, you know that's not his skill, you know that particular thing is going to shut down, you have to learn how to do it. And that's where Agile makes it a little more difficult. Cross-functional teams are open giving feedback. I talked to you about, this is not retrospective in sprints, I'm talking about appraisals. Appraisal and promotion is strong, transparent. You could even have a scenario where you could have team members proposing each other for promotion. Does anyone have a company where they do that? Informally? Formally. You could have a tool where you could say, I believe my team member is ready for promotion. Interesting thought. Products, of course, these are obvious. Products built right in iterations. As a manager, you propose that. PO can release products. Product owner sets the backlog. Timelines are committed. Nothing very, it's all process stuff. Okay. Eventually, this is just a summary. These are the scenarios. Know how to deal with attritions, the separation anxiety. Know how to deal with people. The products are shutting down. You have different teams coming together, you have potentially reorganizations that are coming about. As managers who are leading 5, 6, 7 agile teams, you would need to know how to deal with that. As individuals who are using, because in the end, everybody is looking to you for certain guidance, right? You need to provide that value, know how to remove the question marks, how do you embrace change technologies, and use your skills. In the end, whether you would be Dhoni or Kirsten, I would probably say this business or management, but people would lean towards being Kirsten as a manager. That's where you need to be. That's what Scrum is coaching you to be. You are probably equally or more capable of being Dhoni, but be towards Kirsten. And to summarize, I don't think managers are clerks. Neither do I don't know whether they are clerks or supermen. I think they're probably bits of both. It just depends on the situation. You as a manager have to often play the role of a clerk where you have to approve that leave or that thing, because fundamentally when you're approving a leave, it's not a tool thing. You are approving a lot more things than that. It looks clerical, but it is important. And sometimes you have to be Superman. You have to step in and the team is completely in shambles, and you've got to sometimes step in and solve the things, bring in the right people. You have all the CEO shouting all that stuff. Sometimes you'll be people in between, and I'm sure each of you have skills, and each of your teams will know that you have skills. And as someone once told me that, you can't. Nobody's going to like you, and not everybody is going to like you for everything, and that's the wonderful thing about being a manager. Not everybody will like you, but you'll do your job the best to your abilities. So, thank you.
Did we skip a couple of slides just to get that? Can we go back on that?
I only skipped one slide, which was kind of obvious, which is in a project you have 3 parts: people, project, and product, which is kind of obvious. That's the only thing I skipped.
I had a question on in the classical model. So you as a manager typically will be accountable for the outcome of that project. But in this setup that you are describing, the team is taking the task, the team is pretty much meeting the timelines or not meeting it, whatever the case may be, right? So how do you reconcile that one person being accountable or responsible for this, especially when several agile scrums are potentially with them as a manager? That's one point. The second point I had is, which I didn't see in your slides, is the aspect of people development, right? Skill development, training, developing our people, competency and all that stuff. Would you class that as another role that a manager can actually play, so that he can take an external perspective, a step back, and help facilitate that a manager, right? More effectively than in the older model where he was potentially doing the allocation of the tasks and everything as well.
The second one is the easier one. The answer is obviously yes. That your job is to develop people, so thus you need to take. Okay, I should have repeated the question. I think it was more about can a manager's role be more, should it be used more for development of people also? Answer is obviously yes. And thank you for pointing out, yes, obviously you should be doing that. But the role is not very different from a waterfall or an agile. So, I mean, you would develop people either way. If you want to send somebody for training. In this context, the only difference is probably if you have a product backlog coming up two sprints from today, which needs you to have people trained on Ruby on Rails and create times and put things into the sprint planning, saying that, hey, this is training time or something like that. Another way companies often do is they can say 80% of your time is sprint time and 20% is self-development time. Neither is right or wrong. The first part of your question, the first question was about accountability. Now as a manager, it actually holds back, it's a deeper question than just accountability. It's a question of what is it that a manager is going to be appraised on? I went one level deeper. I don't know, when an engineer asks a question, the context is different. When a manager asks a question, the context is sometimes different. When an engineer asks a question, they probably want to know is, am I accountable for it, or when I get into trouble, am I supposed to go to a manager or something like that? In a traditional world, you might have done that. Here, the philosophy is that the Scrum team is supposed to step up and take on the problems and solve it together with themselves, with the product owner. The manager probably can provide a supporting role in terms of whether it's in terms of resources, potentially reviews, technology, whatever be the case. Now that's the Scrum view, and that's what Scrum says we should be doing. Right? In a traditional world, you might have said manager will hold status meetings every day or something like that. Now the second part of accountability, if you ask from a manager's perspective, is that what am I accountable for? I mean, now I'm flipping the question. You ask what am I accountable for? What am I being appraised for? Now you could take it in two ways. One is you could say that you're accountable obviously for people, for all of those disruptive influences that I showed you in those scenarios. How do you preempt, predict and deal with them? You're accountable for development. You're also accountable for, I would say in terms of for delivery to some extent, while not directly, because you need to make sure you will, different companies deal with it differently. Now because we all interpret Agile in our own way, some companies say that some delivery goals need to be in managers' goals also. Some companies may not say that. So the
challenge comes from the way the mindset of, because we need to have one throat to choke, right?
Correct. But in this case, I would say it's the product owner whose throat should ideally get choked rather than the delivery manager. And delivery managers have to learn to deal with that. I mean, that's where comes the problem. Often delivery managers do not know how to deal with that, and they do not know, they think that, so the scenarios which I explained, in some ways you add value, and delivery is just one aspect of it. The second thing is I've often seen some delivery managers could also do, and this is a tricky topic, you could potentially choose to be more hands-on. You could say that there are certain parts of the backlog that I will do. And in that context, I am a contributor, I am not a manager. If that's the path you choose to take, it's a good choice. You could try that out. I have tried it, it sometimes works, and it could lead to positive benefits.
In that context, will the manager be part of the standards and all the meetings?
It's a brilliant question. It's a segue. That's where I said the book doesn't say that to you, but if you try it, you might find it. It's not. That's why I said it's a +1 kind of thing. It's not in the book.
And after that is also team member can threaten.
However, I tell you, it depends on what you're doing. It depends on how you're doing it. If you're going to do that as a manager and say, I'm not going to send a code review to you ever, and I will not send, my document cannot be reviewed and you can't give comments. However, that's where you have to learn to be a little, if it's a mistake, you have to say, I can.
So I have a question. Unlike a standard SDLC, right? So Agile, we have started this journey stating that self-organizing, cross functional teams and self-motivated and all that. in this entire journey or in this, there is not a single framework which, unlike SDLC, right? They don't need to talk about much people-centric kind of thing. Here we are talking about the self-motionality even after 10 years or nearly a decade of this journey. As a community, we are not able to answer those questions. Say, for example, they cannot be motivated until they are appraised and kept happy. Even today, we have multiple, not conclusive answer to the appraisal system within the agile process as such. So now, can you tell me why this is happening? Because we are talking about ideal scenario, a permanent tree which has no attrition, self-organizing, no governance, everything, which is a very hypothetical situation. You will never occur.
Yeah, see, the question is like, if an Agile still face problems and still have all this, but my opinion is that I think it's because fundamentally people are unpredictable. Whether it's Agile, whether it's waterfall, you're going to have certain churn. Agile is not saying that it's going to be the perfect people-oriented process. We are only giving suggestions. Agile has different problems. What are the different problems people-wise? I just portray some of the problems which you could have. But I don't think it says anything.
Thanks. A warm round of applause for anything about the ego, about any particular feature. Do it's an open feedback, and similarly, if you are unliking anything, do put it there. We are having, the posters. So fantastic posters are coming up there, where some of you are actually depicting how Agile is being run in their organization, or how they understand Agile. So the best poster is going to win an award at the end of the day during the award ceremony. Let's break for lunch. It's warm, it's ready. So we'll meet at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
Class? 10 o'clock? 10 o'clock? Yes. Iwala mane
every nook and corner of India, like even Jaipur and Chandigarh and Ahmedabad, in Cochin, across all. You have a lot of excitement and people want to know, but they do not have the budget to come down to major cities. But if we run there, maybe a smaller crowd, but people love it. And that's the way to spread Agile. When we saw this concept, we knew that it is an operational headache. Organizing in 6 cities in 1 week, it's not easy going across the cities. But we have built a team. We started this company 3 years back, and we focus on, we focus on one important gap that was lying in this knowledge share business. We are in this business of sharing knowledge. Conference is one of the medium to do that. The other medium we do is training and others, and we realized that as a professional, because I was also working in companies like IBM and Tesco and ANZ, as a professional, I was not getting information like startup and involved the customers, ran a lot of free sessions, gained the feedback. Now we are running huge events in India and 14 other countries across all emerging technologies and processes. So, and from technology now we have moved beyond, and we are also running conferences in the area of sales, marketing, and also for the CXOs. Because we realized that to make the real difference, we have to invite senior executives. That's where we are running separate tracks for CXOs. They do not want to come here. They want to come, in a small boardroom kind of. There are only 7 or 8 of them are there, and that's the feedback, honest feedback that I'm giving you. They don't want to come in a crowd and ask questions, especially if the questionnaire is from somebody who is from the same company. In fact, in Mumbai, we had the CEO of a particular company. He was there in our conference, and he came along with 20 of his colleagues. And everyone said that I am having a problem with senior management. They do not understand silence. Just imagine he left after 1 hour. So that's